Well, Maryland's firearm season's been open for a week now, and you can only imagine the effect of 300 or 400 guys plowing on the 1,500 acres before the sun comes up has on the deer. They tend to go underground, and things really slow down out there on the areas where firearms discharge is allowed. Can make it real tough on an archer looking for a good buck, trying to get a shot at 25 yards or less. I'm fortunate enough to have these bow hunting only areas fairly close to where I live, and when the firearm season opens, I tend to switch over and hunt the areas where firearms discharge isn't allowed. Now, this doesn't mean a good buck's going to be a gimme, or deer is going to be a gimme for that matter. The deer are shot at on the surrounding areas, and you got to get out there and scout and see where this pressure has relocated the deer to. Kind of surprised. It looks like there's a real good fresh rub line heading up onto this red oak flat. It's a nice late season food source. Actually, the rub line is heading off the red oak flat and the clear cut over to my left back up towards the private property, which leads me to believe that this might be a good morning setup back up in the thicker area here in the timber. It's thick near the private property border, and it could be where the buck's bedding. I'm gonna go take a look around up in there, maybe pick a spot, move on, find a few more. Of course, I'm always on the lookout for rubs, and with the rut having wound down and the second phase of the rut where the fawns and unbred does will be coming into heat in December, a good place to stake out would be an area if you find some fresh scraping activity. Always a good bet to set up near those. The one thing you don't want to overlook is fresh droppings, and the larger the better. If they're not fresh droppings in an area, the deer probably aren't using it that much. You can't go wrong with droppings the size of these. Look at that, it's huge. Now, if you take one thing away with you from this series, I hope it is that it is important to continue scouting throughout the season when you're hunting public land. Not just for bucks, but for does as well. I cannot express to you how important it is to continue scouting and stay on top of fresh deer sign throughout the entire season. If you do this, it'll make you a much more successful hunter, no matter what you're after. So the last few days of the 2011 calendar year have found me here, stationed 20 feet up the side of this tree since a bit before dawn, bow hunting. And I haven't seen a thing. You know, hunting the late season, it can be feast or famine. The deer have been subject to quite a bit of pressure at this point in time, and they're also herding up in large groups for the winter. So you're either going to see quite a few, or you probably won't see any at all, and that seems to be the case here this morning. But this is a great looking spot. I've chosen it for several reasons. The main one being all that fresh bucksign I found last week when I was scouting. It's a trail that comes off a feeding field 70-80 yards off to my left here, and it works its way back up onto a south-facing cedar slope. Now that offers quite a few advantages this time of year. The cedars and the south-facing slope help break the wind and offer a bedding area where the deer can come and bed and catch the warming rays of the sun. It offers me the advantage of having a spot where I can get up in a tree and not skyline like I would hunting open hardwoods this time of year. I'm sitting up here, it's working on 11, and I'm thinking I should just get down slow morning, getting cold, and go ahead and head out. Look out there across the field, and I see about 100 yards out, I see 5 or 6 deer moving across the open field. Now I'm thinking they're does, and I'm also thinking I've only got a few days left to hunt this year, and if I can put a little more meat in the ice chest this year, that'd be a good thing. So I tossed a couple of grunts out there at them, and while most of the group kept moving off in the direction they'd been headed, one of them cut off and headed in my direction. And it was that little Forky. He'll be a nice deer in a couple years. Well, we can't say I was skunked, can we?
You know, there's one thing that I absolutely will not do, and that's hunt an area that I think a real good buck's using when the wind is wrong for that spot. And as it turned out, between work obligations and wind directions, that ended up being my last hunt for this particular hunting season. But just because the deer season closed doesn't mean my time in the woods is finished. It's time for some post-season scouting. Right after the season is over is a great time to get out and scout. Not only is traditional sign easy to see, but you can scout for the large tracks that'll let you know that a good one made it through the hunting season and will probably be available next year. Now, it's also the only time of year I feel really comfortable doing detailed invasive scouting trips of the thick areas where I think the big bucks bed. I'll get in these areas, look for sign, look for the trails in and out, and I'll pick a tree with no intention of returning to it until late October or early November next year during the pre-rut, trying to catch that buck after a long night of sniffing for does that aren't quite receptive yet. And with the good Lord willing, that's exactly what I'll do. Be there and put a good one on the ground. I hope you'll join me. To see all the videos in the Public Land Pope and Young series, and to catch new episodes as soon as they air, be sure to visit us on the web at www.camochairproductions.com.